It's Slate Night, the Film Fan Podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Corey and Mason.
Hello, and thanks for sitting down with us. This is our 12th episode of Slate Night, the Film Fan Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Mason Schmidt, here with my best bud, Corey Knudsen.
Ew.
As we get ready to drink beers and talk movies. We'll discuss what films we've seen lately, the new releases that are on the horizon, and we'll also provide updates on some physical media releases and other latest notable developments in the world of movies. But first, Corey, how have you been? And second, what are we drinking tonight?
You know, we are recording this episode on January 19th. Not only are we back today, TikTok is also back.
Surprisingly.
After going dark Saturday night, it's back this morning. Trump said he's going to extend the thing for a bit, so that's cool. I love that one of the first things I saw back on it this morning was The Wolf of Wall Street. I'm not fucking leaving! I'm not fucking leaving! That made me very happy. Also, just because I want to start posting some stuff that we do on TikTok. I made an account. Haven't put anything on there yet, but I think it'd be really fun. So glad that it's hopefully back for the long term. I know you don't have it.
I don't have it, and I didn't even know it went down until my wife has it. We're laying in bed last night, and she's like, it's giving me like this warning, or not warning message, but just like, temporarily down or whatever, explaining what's going on. And it's just like, wow, I didn't imagine. It's like, it's like when we lost Vine, and everyone was like, what the fuck? What are we going to do? It's like, bring that shit back too, Trump. Just please.
Vine was great.
Vine was my shit. I missed that. That was peak comedy for, I feel like, most of America. But yeah, crazy that TikTok was gone for all of like 2 hours, it feels like.
Yeah, we're back. We are fucking back.
Do you want to introduce the fucking beverage?
Oh, yeah, shit. Yeah, my bad. I was just kind of thinking about that, yeah. I was just thinking about The Hangover after I said that when they're in the car, and he's like, we are fucking back.
We are back!
Yeah, and then in my head, I was just thinking about Hangover. Anyways. Today
I'm
we're
just going to open it.
Yeah, just open the shit. Today we're drinking Down by the River. Down by the River. A Pilsner made by Broken Clock Brewing Cooperative out of Minneapolis. I already cracked into it. This shit's awesome, man. And we got it in some Slate Night mugs that a friend made for us.
Oh, yeah. I got these for Christmas, actually, and I completely forgot about them. I put them in Corey's freezer before we recorded last week's episode and then just proceeded to leave them there and forget about them. But these are big glass steins made by a friend of mine and my wife's, and they have our logo kind of embossed, or I don't even know what etched into the side of it. So it's really cool. It's nice to have kind of something customized specifically for our show, as someone who's like, damn, it'd be cool to have like a sweatshirt with our logo on it. But this is really cool. So we finally get to use these after having them for like 3 weeks. But yeah, they're great. I haven't even tried the beer because I've been waiting for you to get the fucking name of the beer out. So
yeah, you got a big head on there.
I like it. And the beer's good. So yeah, we'll be drinking that for the rest of the show today. Going into what we've seen lately, I finally was able to catch a showing of The Brutalist, as it's kind of expanded out its release scheme and now is showing in a couple of theaters in the Minneapolis area. But Brutalist, directed by Brady Cobe, director of Vox Lux, a smaller, more independent film. Film stars Adrian Brody, Felicity Jones, and Guy Pearce, after looking back at the SAG nominations, they both were absent on both of those lists, and kind of surprising, especially after seeing the movie. Synopsis here: when a visionary architect and his wife flee post-war Europe in 1947 to rebuild their legacy and witness the birth of modern United States, their lives are changed forever by a mysterious wealthy client. This movie, I feel like the biggest thing going into it was people talking about the runtime of it, because it is a long movie. It's, I think, listed at like 3 hours and 34 minutes or 35 minutes. That is with a built-in 15-minute intermission that splits the film into two kind of even. I think it's like an hour and 45 minutes. The intermission kicks in, then you have another hour and 45 when you come back. So it's pretty evenly well split. My only gripe with, I love the fact that they did an intermission. Any movie theater seat for that long is going to get uncomfortable at a point. So I was happy to get out and stretch my legs and get more cookie dough bites. So, but my one gripe with intermissions, it splits movies into two, and you can kind of easily compare first half to second half and see what works best for you or what worked better for you. Overall, Brutalist, I was blown away by. I really was surprised by how much I found myself liking this film, which I've seen Vox Lux, which I mentioned by Brady Cobe, a very emotional and kind of traumatic movie. And there's notes of that in The Brutalist, of this man, this architect, played by Adrian Brody, just going through it in his basically his voyage to America and trying to make a living, trying to settle, trying to find a place to kind of call his own so that his wife has some place to meet him at when she makes her way over to America. And Guy Pearce is amazing in this film. I think one of the better performances from 2024, which is, again, why it's so surprising that he's not in those SAG nominations, because I think he might upstage Adrien Brody at times, which Adrien Brody, I feel like, should be a lock for an Oscar nom and maybe even an Oscar win. I would not be mad or surprised by either of that, the nomination or the win. Corey, before I talk too much about The Brutalist, where is your expectation level at for The Brutalist?
I'm really excited. I'm going to see it tomorrow. See it at an AMC theater, which we've said how we feel about AMC, but I feel like seeing it on a bigger screen than some of the smaller theaters around here will be really cool. And especially before Oscar nominations come out on Thursday, this is going to be a big contender this year, so absolutely excited to see this movie. The length doesn't bother me, and I'm also really excited to see a movie with an intermission, because I've never seen that in a theater before, so that's kind of old school, which I'm stoked for. And we've obviously been talking about this movie for a long time. I think we brought it up in the new releases when it was kind of limited release months ago. So yeah, definitely pumped to see this one tomorrow and talk about it on next week's show.
Yeah, the intermission I can tell definitely caught some people in the theater caught them off guard, which the theater wasn't like packed by any means, but there was kind of surprised at how many people were willing to go watch a 3.5 hour long film. But the intermission kicks in and lights come up and everyone's just like looking around like, what? But the thing I really liked about this intermission, because I've seen intermissions in movies before, this one actually throws a timer up on the screen, and it's a photo of Adrien Brody and his family, and you hear the music of the film still playing out throughout the intermission. So I kind of didn't want to leave too much, because I was like, this is still part of the movie to me. Like, I want to catch as much of this as possible. But they put 15-minute clock up there and they let it count down, so you kind of know when you need to rush back to your seat. It's filmed beautifully. It's so well directed, and with it being, if you take the intermission out of it, basically 3 hours and 20 minutes, the movie was never boring to me. And it's a very emotional film. It's kind of takes a toll on you. So I haven't posted a review of it at all or put anything out there about how I felt about this movie, just because it's a lot to unpack. But I know Adrien Brody was stellar. Felicity Jones, she's really only in that second half of the film after the intermission, but she's amazing in it. And Guy Pearce gives just such a commanding performance, and I always feel like I'm surprised by how much I like him in films, and then I see him, I'm like, God, he's just maybe one of the best working actors today. I have no notes in terms of like negatives. There's nothing I would change. I was never bored during the film. I'm sure you could find things to like nitpick and try and take out of it, but there's nothing that like jumps to mind for me where I'm like, I don't need that scene, or I don't need this or this aspect. It's really just about this man coming to America with goals in mind and getting brutalized by America, and him just trying to make a living, to find some footing, and the world just kind of beating him down, which it does at times get to be a bit much. But especially in that second half, you kind of, it's like, wow, like fucking ease up. Like, I get it's bad, but like, can we just throw this dude a bone? But yeah, I really liked it. I am happy I was able to see it again. We did our top 10 a couple of weeks ago at the tail end of 2024. This wouldn't be in my top 10, but again, this is another phenomenal film that I think definitely is deserving of that honorable mention status for me from last year. And if Brady Corbet was able to get a director nom and maybe even a director win, I wouldn't be mad or surprised at that either. It is really one of the most big-scale, epic movies about a rather small story of this man coming to America, and I was kind of blown away about how well it was realized, and I recommend it to just about everyone. I don't know who all is going to go sit down and watch a 3.5 hour long movie in theaters and not have a sore ass and get mad about having to read subtitles every once in a while, but it's definitely worth your time if you're in kind of looking for that kind of experience. It's a very well made film, and I was pleasantly surprised and blown away by how much I liked it.
Yeah, well, you're used to having a sore ass, so I think...
Right. As soon as I said that, I was like, I saw your eyes, and I saw the mental math of you adding that joke together, and you're like, I can't wait to throw this in, but whatever, I guess I'll just let you take that shot at me. But yeah, Corey, I hope you get a sore ass watching it, and then maybe you go into the theater.
Yeah, fuck you too. So this week, I did a little trot through history.
Trot?
Yeah, a little trot.
Okay.
You like that word? You like that? Yeah, you heard the word trot in a while? You like that? Yeah.
I have no comment. Just fucking say your shit.
A little trot, almost like a wolf, you could say.
No.
It's good, you know.
Move on.
In preparation for the new Wolfman, like I said, I watched the old iterations of the Wolfman. Started off with the 1941 version of the movie, which is the classic Universal Monsters movie. It was coming out in the time of all the Frankensteins and Draculas and all that stuff. And I'd never seen it before, and it was really fun watching this movie. You got Claude Rains, Lon Chaney Jr. plays the wolf himself, and I am a sucker for like 1940s Hollywood movies, and just like the craft that they use to make these movies, I'm always going to enjoy those. They didn't have the resources that we have today, obviously, so like just seeing the sets that they build, and the makeup work still looks really good, even, you know, like 80 years later. And it's really just a simple story. It's like an hour and 10 minutes. It really is just a breeze getting through it. They hit all the points. It's pretty straightforward story. Just about this guy that returns to his father's estate, and he meets a woman, and there's weird gypsies around, and these myths about, you know, this wolf man, and when the full moon comes out. And it was really cool reading up on this movie, too, just how this movie introduced a lot of the stereotypes of werewolves, and like the silver bullets, and like using silver to kill werewolves and all that. That I didn't realize came from this movie. I thought that there had maybe been like a book or something, but this is a pretty influential movie in that sense. So I really enjoyed that one, and definitely a classic that I'm glad that I've checked off the list. And then I watched the 2010 Wolfman, which there's no space in between Wolfman, so just Wolfman. This is directed by Joe Johnston.
I didn't even think about that until now that I could see it. Yeah.
So yeah, we three separately titled movies: The Wolfman, The Wolfman, and Wolfman. So
a little bit of variation in every one of those.
That's right. But yeah, so Joe Johnston directed the 2010 version. He gave us The Rocketeer, Captain America: The First Avenger, Jumanji. So he's done some things. Recently, he hasn't done that much, but this movie stars Benicio del Toro, Anthony Hopkins, Emily Blunt, Hugo Weaving, who is my favorite part of the movie. He plays the inspector that's trying to figure out, you know, what's going on in this small, like, England town or whatever. Essentially, it's the same story, but this 2010 version is a bit more on the action and horror elements to it, so you get a lot more big scenes. And this movie is, you know, kind of looking into the reviews beforehand, it wasn't received very well when it came out, and it's still not really loved by a lot of people, I don't think. But I didn't mind this movie. I don't think it's a great movie by any means, and we'll talk in a little bit about the new one, but I think that this one is a very fine movie, but this won't be the one that I ever choose if I'm going to watch a Wolfman movie. But there's some interesting elements in there, and I think some of the parts of the different reactions of people at this time, like there's scientists and doctors that are like, no, he's not actually like transforming into a wolf, he just thinks he is, and you know, he's just like, it's just the guy killing these people. So it brings up some ideas like is he actually doing it, or is he actually just killing them as a man, or is he actually transforming? And that happens in both the original movie and this 2010 one, so that it brings in some of those ideas, but the 2010 one is kind of forgettable, and it's very 2010. It's just like very saturated, and you know, I don't know. It's an interesting watch if you're into the franchise and wanted to do a little history lesson, which is what I chose to do. Like I said, took a little trot through history.
Yeah. All right. I'm just gonna keep harping on that. Even as someone who, so I've seen the 41 The Wolfman, and I watched that, I think, in a film class, and it's like it's cool to see those old movies where it's like everything on like in frame is tangible. Like this is all real. Whereas like you watch Red One nowadays, and it's like you guys are on a beach, but I know you're on a soundstage because that sand is fake as shit, and you have black outlines around your entire body. Like you guys are, this is bullshit. But I love watching old films. I love the classic Universal horror icons of like Wolfman, Invisible Man, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Dracula, obviously. So getting kind of that era of those horror films they're just such a fun time to kind of go back. It's almost like watching Saturday morning cartoons for me. I've not seen the 2010 The Wolfman, which even after your sales pitch of it being just like completely fine, I still so like eagerly want to watch this movie. I was hoping to try and watch it before we recorded today, just so we can kind of have a little bit more of a back and forth on it, because like Danny Elfman did the score for it, Joe Johnston. who directed The Rocketeer, made this fucking movie. I love The Rocketeer, and I love the first Avenger and Jumanji, obviously, and this cast is so stacked. So I'm going into it with really sky-high expectations for a movie I've only heard negative things about.
The score is really good.
Yeah, I've heard the score is great. I've seen that, like, transformation scene of Benicio del Toro where he's basically in front of the entire, not like a court, but basically just like, oh no, this is real. Like, this man is turning into a fucking wolf. And I'm almost nostalgic for this movie as someone who's never seen it. I used to watch Adult Swim a lot as a kid, and they'd always play like horror movie trailers late at night. And I remember this being one of those, and I was like, oh wow, I am not going to be able to see that movie in a long time. So
also,
I really want to see it.
This movie, Oscar winner for best makeup.
Really?
Yeah. I was just looking through like IMDb, just scrolling through, looking at trivia and stuff.
Interesting.
And,
looking back on it, it doesn't look like a lot of the look of the werewolf like looks that practical to me. So
it's so the transformation itself is like more CGI. But once it actually gets to like Benicio del Toro,
this man is hairy.
Yeah, like once it actually gets to that, it looks pretty solid. But I was just surprised to see that
Okay.
Oscar winner, The Wolfman.
It's like Oscar winner Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
Or whichever one, the 2016 or
just Suicide Squad.
It's
yeah.
just Suicide Squad. James Gunn did it right. Moving on to present day Wolfman movie. Wolfman, released just this past week, directed by Lee Winnell, director of Insidious 3, Upgrade, and Invisible Man. Stars Christopher Abbott, Julia Garner. Christopher Abbott, who is just the actor I think I gush the most about, just because I think he's super underutilized. But it's a family in a remote farmhouse being attacked by an unseen animal, and as the night goes on, the father, played by Christopher Abbott, is slowly starting to show concerning signs to his family of, oh, do you have rabies right now? Like, what is this? What's going on with you? As he kind of goes through this transformation. I had this on my top 10 most anticipated films of 2025. I believe it was my number 2, so pretty high up. And I didn't have like sky high expectations. I didn't think that this movie was going to be the best movie ever made. I just really wanted a good horror movie, especially coming off of like Nosferatu and knowing what Lee Winnell's done with Invisible Man and Upgrade and his other horror films and his work on Saw and the Saw franchise. I was just really excited to get kind of a new, fresh take on present-day Wolfman. And I think that this film delivers on all those notes and is a great time at the theaters, and I had a great time watching this film. I think it did a really good job of kind of developing more of an emotional backstory to this affliction that this character gets where he turns into a wolf. And like, it's more tragic, I feel like, in this movie. So Corey, before I ramble on, I want you to also voice your opinion, because you are a little bit more well-versed in terms of Wolfman in the history of cinema now. So I'd like to kind of get your take on it, too, before I kind of ramble on too long.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. I think we're pretty similar. We have similar thoughts on this one. I enjoyed it a lot. I think it's a solid January movie, which you can't say a lot of times. Nope. So that's exciting.
These past couple of years, January releases have really kind of surprised me.
Getting a little bit better. But yeah, this one takes a completely different take on the story. It's not the same characters, no really same story beats at all, which I appreciate, kind of reinvigorated a little bit. And what I appreciated about this movie is that it's a very slow transformation. Like, the back half of this movie is just Christopher Abbott slowly transforming into a wolf. You just see like his arm and like parts of his eyes and stuff like that. And that's very different from the kind of transformations, even like an American Werewolf in London, like the legendary transformation scene there, where it's pretty sudden and it happens quick.
That's this entire movie.
Yeah, it's this movie, and I think that may throw some people off, and a little bit different than what they expect. But something that I think elevated this movie a lot for me is the perspective that they show of the Wolfman himself, Christopher Abbott, and as he's transforming, there's some really great like camera work and lighting that I guess they did a lot of it like in camera, and they show his perspective of like his daughter and his wife are talking and he can't understand them, like it's kind of like the Peanuts like parents talking almost, and he's like trying to make them out, you know, in what they're saying, and then the camera will rotate back to like Julia Garner and it's them just saying that, and the lighting changes, and I think it's a really great way to bring some new life into a character in a story that we've maybe seen done before. And also there's a great scene involving a spider in a closet that was my favorite sequence in the movie, because you're watching it and you're like, what's going on right now? Like, what is this? And then you see it, and they just kind of let it sit there for a minute, and it's a great way to introduce this way of perspective that I thought was really interesting.
I completely forgot about that scene.
Yeah, but it's great. So I really enjoyed
subtle.
it. Yeah, it's very subtle. The performances are great. I think where this movie for me lacked a little bit is some of the emotional depth. I didn't feel like hit as much as it wanted to. It tries to touch on a lot of themes of like family and relationships between father, wife, daughter, and generational trauma as well. It kind of ties in, and I think it touched on those themes, but it's a little bit surface level in that, so I didn't like fully get invested. And some of the dialogue was a little corny at times, not all of it, but just a few lines here and there. So it didn't hit as much as like The Invisible Man, where that really is a great take on like domestic violence, and you really are like with Elizabeth Moss for that movie. But I think this is a really solid movie, and I would absolutely check this one out again just for like a fun little thriller. It's a pretty tight like hour 40
something.
Yeah, so pretty great runtime there. So I enjoyed this movie a lot. I'd give it like a B+. Had a great time watching this to start off the year.
Yeah, in terms of like complaints, I don't really have much. A complaint that I think I would voice is I think it could have been a little bit grosser, or a little bit more grotesque, but I've seen other reviews, and even talking with my wife, it was perfectly grotesque enough for them. So like it's like, all right, maybe I was just a little bit expecting a little bit more, but the parts where it does get kind of more gnarly and a little bit more brutal, there are some things, or like some scenes of basically Christopher Abbott dealing with this illness, and his family's trying to basically console him back to health, and he's like, I'm gonna show you how bad this illness really is, and I'm gonna just start taking chunks out of my arm, like just random kind of shit like this that just kind of floored me. And I really do like the representation of kind of this overtaking of this wolf persona, or this rabid infection as an illness, and Julia Garner, I think, does a great job of kind of playing that role of like, all right, I don't know what the fuck's going on, but like we need to separate you from our daughter. Our daughter shouldn't see this. This is you at your worst. Whether that's your fault or not is to be determined, but also you are going through something, and we need to make sure you're back to health, because your daughter loves you more than she loves me. Which I thought that dynamic was really good, of Christopher Abbott really connects with his daughter, and he wants to have this good relationship with his child and make her feel safe. So the fact that he's the one that's making her in harm's way is something I thought was really just a good note on something that I'd kind of look at as being a simple story, and I thought, wow, you really like are developing this into something that is trying to have a voice or trying to say something. And kind of there's a line in the film about you try to protect your kids from having scars, but then you become the thing that scars them. And I don't know if that's correct 100%, but it's something along those lines. And I was like, wow, like okay, like this works for me. And the way that they kind of work that into the film later on with some third act reveals and things that you learn, I'm like, wow, okay, this is really working for me. I do agree with you about some lines, especially in the beginning, between Christopher Abbott and his daughter are a little, it's like, I don't know if this is poorly written or poorly delivered, but like it's just a little corny at times. And as someone who loves Christopher Abbott, I think he gives a good performance, not like amazing, but I think he was really good in this film. I think everyone is really good in this film. I forget the name of the daughter, but she was so fucking adorable in this movie that it was, as a married man who grew up with 3 brothers, I really only hope I have daughters, and I hope our daughter is as cute as this little girl is, and just their relationship. Did you find her name?
Matilda Firth. Want to give her a shout out. She was great.
She was fantastic. And typically child actors for me in movies, I'm like, this is going to go 60-40. 60% you're probably going to piss me off. 40% you might actually be good. I'm a little uneven in terms of that, just because I come in with my own biases. But she was great, and I thought that their dynamic was really well executed. I think, and this kind of ties in with my rant on like horror films not being scary, this film wasn't super scary to me, but I think the sound design is something that we should acknowledge. It was so, like, you hear the things shifting within this man. You hear knuckles breaking, reforming, moving, and and the final look of him, I know that was kind of something that was kind of harped on in terms of the way the film was marketed. They showed just basically, I believe I've seen this man in makeup and this just long hair, and people are like, is this the Wolfman? Like, just this Joe Schmo Neanderthal in the woods? And it's like, no, I actually really like the final look of him, and I think that it fits the story they're trying to tell, as to like, no, he's not a monster, he's just a man that is infected with something that's rabid. And yeah, the sound design overall, the sound design of like the effects of him changing, but also the score of the film really worked for me. It's not the best horror film I've ever seen. It's not better than Invisible Man. I do think I'd put it on tier with Insidious Chapter 3, which is one of my favorite of the Insidious franchise, but that film being directed by Lee Winnell. I really was pleasantly surprised and also really enjoyed this film. I'm excited to kind of have it as a rewatchable like horror movie for these universal classic horror icons. I hope they keep kind of knocking those out of the park. I know James Wan has his name attached to potentially a creature from the Black Lagoon, and we're getting this upcoming year in 2025. We have Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, as well as Maggie Gyllenhaal's doing The Bride, which is a Bride of Frankenstein story. So I'm really excited to see how much this stuff is still maintained within modern filmmaking. And I've really enjoyed this film, which Rotten Tomatoes score bullshit to me, but whatever.
Yeah, that's a different conversation. Yeah. Also, the practical effects. I don't know if we mentioned that, but yeah, they look really good. It's always a welcome sight anytime a director and a team come together and are dedicated to going through the hours, and the actors as well. They have to sit there for like 3 hours and just get this makeup applied to them. So it looks great, and you can really tell the difference. I was like, wow, is there like I think there's probably little elements of CGI to enhance some stuff, but for the most part, it looks really, really great, and always appreciate when we can see a director like Lee Winnell, who's a horror, kind of a modern horror icon with his involvement in Saw, Insidious, and then obviously Upgrade and Invisible Man. And I like this idea of Universal kind of doing these just one-off or like offshoots of the Universal monsters, and not doing their dark universe that they were trying to do. Yeah. Which that would have been really interesting to see. But I like this idea of like Invisible Man is a very personal story. Wolfman is a different family story. Just kind of doing whatever fits each character the best and making that its own movie or a couple movies if they want to do that.
Yeah, and giving us just good modern interpretations of them and adapting them to the times, just because I like the Invisible Man. How do you make the Invisible Man grounded in reality today? And I'm like, wow, you guys really fucking blew me away with how you were able to represent that. Like, that worked for me. So I'm always excited to see kind of these classic horror characters brought into present day. And yeah, Wolfman, I think, is definitely worth your time. The 58 or whatever Rotten Tomato score that it has, I don't think is generous enough. I think it is something more in the 70s. So if you're one of those people, because I know people like this that really judge movies and whether they're going to go see a movie based on the Rotten Tomato score, I would say throw that in the back. Don't pay much attention to it. Just go see this movie. If you want a horror movie in January, it's worth your time, and I think it's good enough. As opposed to that, movies that I don't think are worth your time or movies that are good, in this kind of effort for me to catch up on missed assignments from 2024 and find movies that I didn't pay much attention to when they came out, and I needed to potentially go back and look at them just because they might be in awards contention, I sat down and watched Challengers, directed by Luca Guadagnino, who I have mentioned before in this podcast that I do really appreciate his work. I love Call Me By Your Name. That is one of my favorite romantic movies. His work on Suspiria with Dakota Johnson is one of the most upsetting, terrifying movies I've seen recently made. I kind of go on this gripe of horror movies not being scary. Suspiria is one of those movies that, like, at times really actually terrified me, so I think it's a very well-made movie, and I think Luca Guadagnino is capable of making good movies. However, he made this movie, starring Zendaya, Mike Feist, Josh O'Connor. It's about tennis, kind of, in a love triangle that you don't care about. Corey, I know you've seen this movie, so I want you to give your 2 cents on it before I don't want to rant on this movie, but I have rant-worthy things to say about this movie. So, Corey, what is your overall opinion of Challengers? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, so I saw this in theaters last, March or April, whatever, in the spring last year. And I like this movie. I think it's enjoyable. I thought the performances were all good. I actually was kind of invested in this love triangle. I thought there were some interesting elements to it over time. And I think the movie takes place over a long period of time, and they do a lot of time jumps in the movie, which was my biggest issue with it, is that the time jumps feel very aggressive at times and very strange, of a day back and then 8 years forward and then 2 weeks back. But you don't know 2 weeks back from which point you were just watching. So it's very... That's my biggest gripe with the movie, but I think the idea of doing time jumps for this movie works to see how the characters relationships have changed and how they progress over time. I think the score for this movie is really great. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. They won Best Score at the Globes a couple weeks ago. So I enjoyed this movie. I thought that it was interesting. I like sports movies too, so like tennis is cool, and like we play tennis
you
together.
and I play very
poor tennis, but it's very fun. That was like a big COVID thing for us. Like we would just go talk about movies and like play tennis. So I enjoyed the movie. It's not like, I mean, it obviously wasn't on my like top 10 of last year, honorable mentions. It's pretty like in the middle for me, as far as that. But I think it's fine. I think that the score for the movie getting some accolades is worthy. I'm cool with that. But I know that you have very different thoughts. As far as like a grade for this movie, I'd probably give it like a B minus, maybe somewhere in that range. Okay. Yeah, but I want to hear your quasi rant on this movie.
So if you asked me right after I watched this movie, which I watched it with my wife, I think her and I probably would have given it like an F, like just straight up. Not even trying to be funny. I just think her and I hated it so much that we would give it an F. Now that time has kind of passed and I've been able to mellow a little bit, I think I'd probably give it like a D plus ish. So there's some things I'm willing to acknowledge that are really good in this film. The performances, for the most part, really worked for me amongst this trio, this love triangle. I don't think anyone necessarily deserves a nomination for their work in this film in terms of acting, but I do think that they're really serviceable. The score by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, I did really like, not in the movie. Which before I saw this movie, I had heard the score, and like when I work out, sometimes the easiest thing for me to work out to is movie scores, so I'll listen to like Interstellar score or Inception, just basically any Hans Zimmer score, or Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. I love the score for Social Network, and this kind of felt derivative of that work, of them trying to... This movie is a drama movie, even though it has kind of a sports backdrop to it. It is a drama film similar to Social Network, and I'm like, oh, I get what you're trying to go for, but we're in Social Network, I'm like, wow, this fucking works with what you're trying to say and the way this film feels. This score distracted, I feel like, and it was kind of laughable in kind of the more tense or more just argumentative scenes, which I get what they're going for, of like, oh no, this is the tennis, or like what things mean, and I'm like, okay, I get it, but it's also distracting as all hell, and I'm not interested in it. But the score outside of the movie, really liked. In the movie, distracting, and I didn't like. So when it comes time for awards season, for it to get a nomination, I'm like, yes, it's good, but it's not good in the way that it elevates the movie it's in, or really even works well with the movie it's in. So that kind of bothers me, even though I love Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, and I like this score, just not in this film. And it didn't work well scene to scene with this film. The film, which I feel like all of the marketing was based around that Zendaya and that bed scene, that pink sweatshirt and her patting on the bed, and the boys rushing to her side because they're like, we are gonna get doubly lucky, and I'm gonna go in one hole, you're taking the other. Like, nice. It felt like it was trying to be so sexy, and I was like, wow, this movie, it was marketed the way like Baby Girl was marketed, where I'm like, this is just gonna be sex heavy, nonstop, sexy movie. Hell yeah, so unsexy. 12-year-old Mason obviously could have thought of better things than this movie. But wow, I was just like, wow, this is it. Like, that was a big selling point. And aside from that scene, there's not really a whole lot of like sexiness to it. And you kind of get it with Zendaya's character. She kind of uses that as like a manipulation factor almost throughout the movie, which is fine. But if you're going to market a film like that, at least pull through with that. Show that. So that kind of bothered me a little bit. I made a note that the love triangle consists of 3 people I don't give a shit about, and they're all, to a degree, very unlikable, except for maybe Mike Feist. I think he was, for me, the character I was personally rooting for more, and I think my wife was, too, at points. We both agree that we hated Josh O'Connor in this film. Not that he gives a bad performance, but his character, I'm like, wow, you are just chaotic and despicable and so hard to watch at times. And, yeah, I sometimes I'd root for Mike Feist. I don't know. The structure of this film, that jumping back and forth through time and very ineptly trying to show a passage of time, the way that this film shows that it's 13 years in the past or in the future or 8 years later is Zendaya's haircut. And that's it. The boys don't change at all. No one gets extra wrinkles. No one has extra makeup. No one ages a day. No one has gray hair. It's just Zendaya's hair gets shorter or fucking longer. It's like, okay, cool. Who gives a shit? Like, it didn't work for me. And I think that element of shifting time periods to show different perspectives, or the way it's used in this film is to try and explain kind of why these 3 people are at odds in the present day. I I feel like a better director could make this film more interesting by telling it straight up in order in the way this stuff occurred, as opposed to trying to hide this bland story in, oh, we're gonna jump here, jump there, oh, this part happened, that's why this person's pissed in this scene, oh, they had sex at this point, so this matters now. It's like, I don't give a shit. Like, it works for me in Dunkirk when it's shifting time periods, which is something I wanted to bring up with you, because I know I love Dunkirk. That is my favorite Nolan film. And I know Dunkirk, for you, that shifting perspective, shifting time period sometimes was distracting to you. In this film, it was distracting to me, where it's not in Dunkirk. So I just kind of wanted to, before I finish my rant on why I didn't like this movie, I kind of wanted to talk to you about the shifting periods in Dunkirk versus this, and why Dunkirk worked for me there. Then when you look at this movie, oh, we're going to jump 8 years back, and then 10 years later, and then a day later, or a day earlier. It's like, what the fuck are we doing? So...
Yeah, I think... I like Dunkirk, but I think that the movie, in that case, like, it doesn't really commit to, like, jumping around in time enough for me to feel like it's earned. It feels like it does it a few times to be like, we're back, okay. Where it feels like we could have probably just told this straight up and it works, and just done some, like, cross-editing of, like, these different characters at this time, you know, in the same place as these different events are going on. Interesting you bring that up, though, because I was just thinking about when you said just the time jumping stuff of Memento, where that movie obviously deals with jumping around in time a lot, maybe the most of any movie ever, which I love that movie. It's like top 3 Nolan for me. I adore that movie, but it's interesting to think if you were to just play that movie out chronologically, it doesn't have the same impact, right? Like, so it's just it's a pretty standard, like, just kind of action-y drama type thing. And I think that's kind of the case with Challengers too. I think that seeing, you know, characters later on and then learning about the backstory is kind of interesting and adds some depth to it and adds some intrigue. So I like parts of that, but like I said, I think they do too many time jumps where it's aggressive, and like you said, it doesn't feel natural for this movie.
Yeah, and for me, with the way Nolan does it in Memento, I'm like, that fits in with this character. Like, there's a reason why they're showing it this way, because this character has this affliction. He forgets his memories, basically, and he just has to relive things. So I like the way it's represented in Memento, because I think it fits the characters within the movie. In Dunkirk, I'm like, land, air, and sea, we're getting all the different perspectives, and they're all unfolding at the same times, basically. So I'm like, this does a good job at representing the horrors of what this event is just unfolding into through different perspectives. Yeah, you don't really know the characters, but that's not necessarily the point. In this film, I don't see the reasoning as to why we're jumping back and forth in time. I just feel like they're like, well, we have this straightforward love triangle, whereas if we showed it from beginning to end, everyone's going to hate these characters and get annoyed by them. So maybe if we jump back and forth and have a little bit of, like, intrigue to these characters of why things happen, and people have these questions before we show them, as opposed to, like, all right, this is predictable, I know what's going on. But I thought it was distracting in this film. I don't think it worked. It didn't service anything, and I don't think it ties in with what the characters are experiencing. Like, there's no reason for that kind of storytelling element to fit in this film. So I thought that was just really... just bullshit. It was just unneeded, and I didn't need it. Zendaya's character is one of the most frustrating, annoying, despicable, bitchy characters in the history of film, I wrote. And before I say that, because I'm bitching about the one woman character in this film, I think if you change the sex of this character and make it a man, I think I'd say the same exact thing. This person is an asshat through and through. And it's like, you're the person this film's marketed to be kind of the most about, and I hate you the most. Like, I don't want to be here sitting with you anymore. It's kind of like the issue of Anora, where you have these two main lead characters where it's like, oh, wow, like, yeah, you're awful. And I'm watching you be awful. Yeah, you're good at being awful, but I don't like watching you. And that's kind of how I went with Zendaya. I think she gives a good performance, but I think her character, I'm like, whoa, like, I don't need this. Oh, my God. Fucking die. I hope your knee injury fucking somehow gets to your spinal cord and somehow dislocates something and your neck shifts and you can't breathe. Like, that's what I wanted to have happen. I thought she was so relentlessly despicable and horrible, and I just could not stand spending any more time with her. I thought the film was boring. The storytelling was obnoxious. That shifting in time was obnoxious. It was not sexy at all. I saw, I think, probably 68... 69, somewhere in the high 60s in terms of movies from 2024. This one, I think, is firmly planted at 66. which means it is below Madam Web. I would much rather, 1,000 times out of 10, rewatch Madam Web than rewatch this movie. This is maybe the most horrible thing I've ever written. And I'm going to say it.
Oh boy.
Challengers is a heaping pile of dog shit. That part's not bad. 13-year-old Mason had cum stains more impressive than this abortion of a film. Luca Guadagnino, statistically, I like your work. I'm like 80% on your work. I love Call Me By Your Name. Queer didn't 100% work for me, but I'm really interested in that movie, and I liked watching it. Suspiria, flying colors, passed the test. Haven't seen Bones and All, but I have seen Challengers, and damn. This is, you shit the bed. Like, straight up, you woke up next to someone, and they had Hershey squirts up and down white sheets. This movie is not good. If I could delete movies from history, there's probably like a list of like 10 to 20 that I'd include in there. Challengers is really barking on the door of that. Of entering into like, you know what? If this movie could be wiped from existence, I would take it out. I want people to watch this movie to see if they agree with me, because I need other people to feel this just horrible dog shit experience that I was exposed to. And this was me just, oh, maybe I should watch this movie from 2024. And then I just fucking ruined my night watching this piece of shit. Like, oh my God. I could say so many more offensive and horrible things to try and compare this to how bad this movie was, but I'm going to practice some restraint and reel that in. Overall, I'd probably give it a D to a D+. Luca Guadagnino, you're better than this. Everyone acting in this movie, you're better than this. Josh O'Connor, I can't wait to see you in Wake Up Dead Man in the new Knives Out film. Mike Feist, you were perfect in West Side Story. Zendaya, love you as Chani, maybe only as Chani. But god damn, this movie was this was a colonoscopy with a frigid-handed railroad spike right into your fucking colon. I'm done. I need to be done. We need to move on. I can't talk about this movie anymore.
To be clear, we have an Instagram, which you guys should follow. Post some reviews and other stuff on there.
You will not see a review of Challengers.
No.
I don't want to.
So sometime Mason mainly kind of runs the Instagram and just putting stuff on our story. Earlier this week, after he watched the movie, he put the thing that Madam Web is better than Challengers. Just want to be clear, I don't feel that.
Oh, buddy!
I just wanted to make that clear that was Mason's Mason's thought on it.
Much rather rewatch that movie 30 times before I watch Challengers again.
Yeah, I wouldn't agree with that, but I just want to get that out there.
If this movie gets nominated for anything aside from score, which I have already acknowledged, I don't think it deserves a score just based on the fact that it doesn't work within the film. If this film gets nominated for literally anything else, I will be so pissed. It would be like Nomadland winning for Best Picture.
I think
it's Green Book winning for Best Picture.
I think it's kind of out of a lot of the big races, so I think you're pretty safe there.
Thank God.
Yeah, but no, I'm glad that you've seen it. That was a fun little rant. I love your rants. I love when you go on rants.
I don't like being mad about movies is the thing, and I can definitely see dumb like 30-year-old Mason is just gonna be like, maybe I was wrong about it. Maybe I should sit down and rewatch this movie and see if I appreciate it more. And I'm gonna curse myself to just 7 years of bad luck and hate my life, because God, I could fold my computer backwards. I hate this movie so much.
Maybe in 6 years, if we're still doing this podcast, we'll revisit it. Maybe you'll revisit it, and we'll see how you feel. And we can put in a clip of this as you're ranting, saying you want a colonoscopy with a railroad spike.
Yeah.
Anyways, out of the Challengers rant, which is great, I got around to watching Hundreds of Beavers, which Mason watched last week and talked about.
Okay. Better and brighter things.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, take another swig. Hundreds of Beavers. Kind of talked about it last week. It's a very, almost like a live-action cartoon of this drunken Applejack salesman who's trying to become a fur trapper, and he's dealing with the elements of a bunch of animals and beavers. It's a very low-budget movie. It's very... as far as the positives I'll give it, it's very innovative in just how it uses its budget and kind of leaning into the campiness of it. Like, that's the point of this movie. And if you're into those types of movies, I think you're going to love this movie. For me personally, I don't love slapstick comedy. It's never really been my favorite thing. It doesn't make me laugh as much as, like, well thought out jokes. I think there's elements of slapstick that are cool, but I appreciate this movie more than I really liked it. Not to say that I have any major flaws with this movie, because I don't. It's just kind of a personal taste thing. But I think like all of the the main guy in this movie is really just, it's almost like playing a video game where you have to, like, you know, kill a certain number of animals to get this tool that you need to kill more animals and get furs and do this thing, and like you go to this same location, like this kind of store almost, to get like credits to buy this stuff. And I thought that was really fun and reminded me of playing a game. And there are definitely some funny moments in this movie that had me laughing, but not everything worked for me. I certainly didn't love it as much as you did, I don't think, and as a lot of other critics who put it as their number one movie of the year. It's just not my type of movie exactly, and I think a lot of mainstream audiences would probably feel that way. Like, I don't think you could watch this movie with like a group of friends and be like, no, this movie's great. I think they'd get sick of it really quickly.
Yeah, I think a general audience going into this would be very kind of polarizing. You have to know what you're getting into and be on board with that before you start watching this movie, because it, like, when it started, I was like, I don't know if I'll be able to finish this, but I love this movie. It was such a fun watch. I can't wait to rewatch it. Everything like really worked for me. I was never bored by it. Everything, I was just like so enamored by the creativeness of it and just the random bullshit that they did. And I'm not a big slapstick person either, and I feel like a large issue of slapstick is it kind of boils down to like the Adam Sandler modern day comedy slapstick, where I'm like, okay, just Kevin James farted, whoa, can't wait. Oh, Melissa McCarthy fell, sweet, can't wait. This movie, like, there's a scene where he is just cornered fighting beavers in like this little barn, and there's like a table saw involved, and he takes a fish off the wall and just hurls it at a man dressed as a beaver, hits him right in the face, and this is the hardest I think I laughed in 2024 in a movie. Maybe aside from Deadpool Wolverine. I was just like, whoa, what the fuck is going on? I love this movie. I'm happy that you're able to watch it, though.
Yeah, I think this would have been a really great, like, 30 to 45-minute short film. I think that would have been the sweet spot. I think it's a bit too long.
Actually, that is a negative I'll agree with. I think you could trim this down. Because when you finally get the title card for the movie of Hundreds of Beavers, which is kind of funny when it comes up, it's like, oh, wow, now the movie starts? You could probably trim like 20 minutes out of this.
Yeah, but I always love supporting small directors that are just doing it by themselves with like a group of friends, it looks like. So really fun to watch, but not exactly my cup of tea.
Mm-hmm. A movie that I rewatched, finally, after a while of it being out and never really knowing what the fuck goes on. I fell asleep midway through this movie, and I watched it with Corey. Movie Bullet Train, directed by David Leitch, director of Atomic Blonde and Fall Guy and Deadpool, and worked on the John Wick stuff, I think. This film was a movie, when I watched it, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I'm really excited. It's just a ragtag group of like assassins stuck on a train, and like there's murder plots and things kind of going awry. And first time we watched it maybe late at night. Maybe I was drinking too much, but I fell asleep like 10 minutes into it. And then I woke up at the end, and Corey looks at me and he's like, damn, that Ryan Reynolds cameo was sweet. And I was like, I'm like, are you fucking with me? Like, is there a Ryan Reynolds cameo, or did you recognize that I fell asleep through the entire thing, so you're just trying to catch me? And I was like, oh, yeah. And you're like, okay.
It was a strange reaction. Yeah. I'm like, oh, you fell asleep?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. I thought he was awake.
I was out the entire time. So I was like, and then you bought me the movie, so I've had it. So I'm like, you know what? I need to sit down and watch it. I loved it. It was so much fun. Glaring, like, thumbs up. Like, everyone should go see this. It was on Netflix for a long time. I don't really know where it's streaming readily. I have that Blu-ray, so I watched it on that. It's got a stacked cast. Just every other scene introduced a new actor, and I was like, holy shit, you're in this movie? Yeah, you kind of have, like, Joey King, who I don't love, or you have Bad Bunny, who I'm like, okay, I guess you can be in a movie. You don't talk too much, that's fine. But you got Brad Pitt, Aaron Taylor Johnson, Michael Shannon, Brian Tyree Henry, Sandra Bullock. Like, it's just a fun cast, and it's just a wacky action movie filmed all on the confines of this train. So this movie, I think, came out 2022, a couple of years ago. If you haven't watched it, definitely go and see it. It's a great time, and it was very fun, and my wife really enjoyed it. I think overall this might be my favorite David Leitch movie. I think his movies, typically their pacing's a little wonky, and they tend to be like 20 minutes too long. And I find that in just about, even like Deadpool 2, I'm like, wow, this movie, the pacing is kind of ass. And Atomic Blonde was too long, and Fall Guy, I feel like, could have been trimmed down a little bit too. But this movie, of his movies, which I've all liked, this one's the most engaging for me. and consistently just fun and well paced. So, and Corey, I know you really like this movie.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. It's my favorite David Leitch movie as well. Glad you finally got to rewatch it. It's kind of been a running joke of like the Ryan Reynolds cameo bit of just you being like, yeah, that was pretty cool.
Now that I think about it, I think I fell asleep early on, but I woke up and I saw Channing Tatum on screen, which he has another cameo in this movie. And
Hilarious.
He's very funny in the movie, and he's in it for like 2 minutes. And I woke up during that bit because I remembered that he was in the movie, and then when I came to watching it again, and I was like, oh, yeah, there's this scene. Okay, and I was being able to piece together this fucking movie that I slept halfway through, so yeah, it's a great movie.
Yeah, standouts for me in there, Aaron Taylor-Johnson and Brian Tyree Henry as Lemon and Tangerine. Such a great duo in that movie. But yeah, really great action movie if you haven't seen that one. Into kind of some shows, Skeleton Crew wrapped up this week. This is the Star Wars show, it takes place in the post Return of the Jedi, before Force Awakens, which we're getting a lot of content in that time frame now. But it's essentially a group of kids on this little kind of pirate adventure, kind of Goonies-esque. And I think I talked about the first 2 episodes a few weeks back, and I wasn't too crazy about them.
You've mentioned that it's kind of improved, though. Right?
Yeah, it's definitely grown on me. I didn't think I needed like a Goonies thing in Star Wars, and the first 2 episodes didn't really work for me. The back half of the season, actually, I had fun with. It's not top tier Star Wars. I think it's better than Book of Boba Fett, better than Acolyte, about the same as Mando season 3. But the kids' performances especially grew on me, and I think that there was some strong elements there. Jude Law in Star Wars is something that I love. That is a thing now. But yeah, it's a fun little kind of swashbuckling, like going planet to planet, little adventure, a fun little mystery in there of like this planet that these kids are from. I think it ends, and there's still some questions that I would have liked answered. So I don't know if we're gonna get a season 2 of this. But I had an overall fun time with this, and every week I found myself getting more excited to watch an episode, being like, yeah, I am kind of excited to see the reveals and see what's happening and some of the history of these characters. So if you're a Star Wars fan, I think you're going to find some enjoyment in this. If you're a fan of kind of Goonies, coming-of-age type adventure movies or shows, I think that it's a decent watch.
That's I haven't watched any of Skeleton Crew, and you and I basically had the same kind of interpretation or expectation for it going in of like, I don't know if I need like a kid-centered Goonies-esque story in the Star Wars universe. So I've been kind of waiting, holding off, similar to how we did with Acolyte. You watched Acolyte week to week, and I was like, I'm going to wait until, because I know you and I typically agree most of the time on stuff. I'm like, unless Corey says that this is great or worth watching, I'm not going to watch it. And then Acolyte finished, and you're like, yeah, that was dog shit. I'm like, okay, maybe I can skip that one. So I've been kind of waiting for you to give me your full thoughts on Skeleton Crew. So now that I know, like, kind of where it works for you and where it doesn't and kind of where it ranks, especially in terms of the recent Disney Plus Star Wars, I am more interested to watch it. I do love the idea of Jude Law being in Star Wars. I love him. I think he's such another underrated actor. Yeah, I'm eager to watch it. I almost started an episode of it this morning, but I decided, you know what, I need a little bit more Creature Commandos, even though that show's not running weekly anymore. I just needed more of David Harbour as Frankenstein. But Skeleton Crew, I definitely think will be one of those shows that I look to visit rather quickly here. Maybe after Severance, as Severance Season 2 is looking to come out. I know you have seen that, and you really like that show. Everyone I know that's watched that show just recommends it to the high heavens, that it's just such a great, thought-out, well-written show. And the fact that Ben Stiller's at the forefront of the creative team, it's like, what the fuck is this? So I'm excited.
Yeah, it's that show is great. And I always hate, like, hyping things up too much. I mean, like, this is one of the best things. But, like, genuinely, I think Severance is one of the most unique and original shows and just very interesting. The first episode's out for season 2. I don't think we mentioned it last week, but it's doing a week-to-week drop, which I love. I prefer that instead of just to drop all the episodes at once. So, yeah, first episode of Severance, season 2, really great. And check out that show if you haven't. You can binge through it really quick.
How many episodes is that first season?
I think it's like 8 or 9, maybe.
And they're like 45 to an hour long episodes?
Yeah, about in that range. So
I need to try and sell that to my wife, because it's really hard to watch things in my apartment with my wife when she's not interested in it. Yeah, we have 2 TVs, but like we spend a lot of time together, which is why I didn't watch Wolfman. Also, the Commanders were playing a fucking amazing game this past week against the Lions, which, sorry to Lions fans, we have a lot of friends that are Lions fans. I kind of was rooting for the Lions, but to see the Commanders just
Jane Daniels. He's
absolutely
a dog.
dishevel that Lions defense and their offense too. It was Sorry, Michael. We were rooting for you. But yeah, Commanders were playing a lights out game, so I didn't watch the 2010 Wolfman, and I haven't watched Skeleton Crew, but I'm hoping to pick Skeleton Crew up and Severance up, and hopefully, if I can catch up to Severance and finish that first season pretty quickly here and get on track with that, hopefully I can wrap up season 2 while everyone else is wrapping up season 2. Otherwise, I've been watching What We Do in the Shadows, which is an amazing, hilarious comedy. I love that show.
I need to check out that show because I love the movie. I need to watch the show.
At times, there are characters in the show that I think are better than the characters in the movie. Laszlo is hilarious. He has so many good line readings, and he's so quotable. But yeah.
Yeah, last point on Severance. I just want to say, I think a few weeks back we mentioned the movie Carry On, which was kind of like, we said, a water cooler movie. I think Severance is a water cooler show, but in a very positive sense, where it's an original thing that everybody is every week at the office being like, oh, did you see the new episode of that? Like, it's really interesting. Whereas Carry On and like some other Netflix movies are like, it's the streaming thing of the week, and you forget about it. Yeah. But Severance is a really great original idea, and I'm always down for that.
Yeah, no, you're 100% correct on that. Because my boss, even at work, he aside from you, he's been the biggest like supporter. Like, have you watched Severance yet? And I'm like, fuck no, I haven't. I'm sorry. And he's like, you need to watch it. And I'm like, okay. So I'm happy to hopefully get it kind of underneath the belt, because I know everyone keeps recommending like Game of Thrones. That's a show I'll probably miss out on entirely throughout the rest of my life. Who knows? But Severance is one of those that, as it gets recommended, I'm like, I know, and I feel bad about not having watched it yet. But yeah, aside from new releases in terms of TV series, we have a couple of releases coming out in January here, January 24th, 2025. First film, a film I'm actually super stoked for. If we were to do more honorable mentions, I think I might have mentioned this actually in our top 10 for 2025. This is one of those films that was on the cusp of being in the top 10, but Presence, directed by Steven Soderbergh, director of Ocean's 11, Traffic, Logan Lucky, Corey's favorite Magic Mike.
Hell yeah.
You really just ran with that. Okay, so you have like connections to that.
Just
movie.
A quick, just like 10-second backstory. I dressed up with a buddy in high school as some Magic Mike dancers for Halloween. So I watched the movies and I'm like, hey, these movies actually aren't that bad.
They're
good. They're not as bad as you would think that they are for male stripper movies. Yeah. That's my thing on Magic Mike.
And his other film, Unsane, which I really like, but this movie starring Lucy Liu, Julia Fox, Chris Sullivan, who I love, and Lucas Papalius. The synopsis is a family becomes convinced that they're now alone in their home after moving into this home in the suburbs. The real kind of selling factor, big marketing thing that this film is highlighting is that the film is shot and unfolds from the perspective of this phantom presence that haunts the home. And everything just says that this is a horrifying experience. So I'm really excited to see this movie, and this will be an opening night. I'm going to go see this. Corey, what do you think about Presence?
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. I don't know that I've seen a Steven Soderbergh movie in theaters, actually, so I'd be excited to go and check this one out for sure. Another option this week is the movie Flight Risk, which is Mel Gibson, Hollywood sweetheart.
Wild trailer, wild director.
Yeah.
Mark Wahlberg with a wild hairline.
I was going to bring up Mark Wahlberg's hair because it's crazy in this movie. Michelle Dockery and Topher Grace also in this. It's about a pilot who's transporting an air marshal that's accompanying a fugitive to trial. As they cross the Alaskan wilderness, tensions soar and trust is tested, as not everyone on board is who they seem.
Which they give that away in the trailer.
Yeah, sure. It's, it looks like a generic movie. Mel Gibson has made some great movies. I mean, Braveheart. I love Hacksaw Ridge is a really great movie.
Apocalypto is very good.
Apocalypto, Passion of the Christ, very influential movie, obviously. So he's made some great stuff, and I don't want to like discount it, but just the trailers and the concept, I'm not like that thrilled about, really.
No, this is the most like head scratching movie from him, where I'm like, okay, like Braveheart, Hacksaw Ridge, Passion of the Christ, Apocalypto, these are very like auteur made. Like you are putting a lot of effort into this film, and Flight Risk just feels like a schlocky, thrown together, random 90s action movie that's missing the 90s by 35 years. It's like, what's going on here? I know that there are some like dads in the world that are like, fuck, this is my most anticipated of the year. And like, good on you. I don't doubt that this film will have like some good aspects to it, but just watching Mark Wahlberg's Unhinged trailer and even the performance in the trailer and his fucking whacked out hairline and I'm not sold on this. I don't think that it's just confusing for Mel Gibson to be making this film. Not to be like, I love Mel Gibson and everything he says and does, but his movies are typically pretty good. And Hacksaw Ridge is his most recent? Is that correct?
One of them, yeah. Oscar nominated for a bunch of stuff.
And it's like,
yeah.
you have Hacksaw Ridge, which I think is such a well-made movie. I'm like, Flight Risk is what are you doing? What is this? So I don't know. I'm interested, I guess, just because his name's attached. And Mark Wahlberg is bald as fuck in this movie, but I can tell you I'm going to be seeing Presence before I see Flight Risk. And I think, Corey, you're probably going to do the same thing.
For sure.
Yeah, Steven Soderbergh over Mel Gibson for very obvious reasons. But physical media, in terms of what's coming out this week, we have a big release schedule. What I did in contribution to trying to buy movies before this big upcoming week, I did buy Bram Stoker's Dracula, the 4K Steelbook. Kind of on a horror kick in terms of like Nosferatu coming out, Wolfman, all these Universal projects that I'm like, I really want to like go back and rewatch like The Old Mummy that I've never seen, or watch the 2010 Wolfman, which Corey talked about. I've never seen Bram Stoker's Dracula, and it's directed by Francis Ford Coppola, which I missed out on Megalopolis, so who knows?
Can't wait till you watch that.
Can't wait until I watch that one, but I'm really excited to see Bram Stoker's Dracula, just because I feel like in terms of like the classic vampire Dracula story, this is the one that I feel like it's talked about the most. Maybe aside from like Nosferatu and maybe even the 2024 Nosferatu, but I'm excited to kind of visit this film, and I know kind of the detractors from this are like, yeah, Keanu Reeves is kind of gives it's a bad performance. So I'm like, all right, well, fine, I'll go in with that in mind, but I'm excited to watch this movie eventually because it feels like one that's kind of been a hole in my like filmography of things I've missed out on and seen. Corey, anything for you from this past week?
I did go to Half Price Books this week, and I almost bought the X-Men Days of Future Past Road Cut. It has a really cool like red slipcover that opens up a bit. I've never seen the Road Cut, and it's not on like 4K as far as I'm concerned. So I was like, do I get this? It was just like a little bit more than I wanted to pay for it, so I ended up not getting it. But that is a frequent thing. I like to go to Half Price.
What was it listed at?
I think it was like $9 or $10, which for a movie that I already own.
Oh, I forgot about that. Okay.
Yeah, so
that makes sense.
I already have the theatrical version of this movie.
I was gonna
so
say like $10 ain't bad.
Yeah, for that, and I'm like, I probably should have just gotten it, but I was like, for a movie I already have, like I'd want it to be like a few bucks cheaper, but nothing else. Life is expensive sometimes.
Life is stupidly expensive.
Car things and rent and groceries and things.
So the worst thing I think about growing up and becoming an adult is like the reoccurring bills of like health insurance and car insurance and just like shit like no one teaches you about, or Wi-Fi. Yeah, no one teaches you about this shit in like school of like, hey, how to manage this. It's just like, oh, hey, you just deal with this when you get it. It's like, oh, sweet, okay. Like and that, or you buy your tabs for your car for the year and you're like, sweet, I'm done. And it's like, well, until next year, and you're like, I
buy stickers to put on your car.
Yeah, fucking stickers.
Great.
Sweet. But anyway, aside from that rant, what's releasing on January 21st, this upcoming week, in terms of Blu-ray and 4K, is going to be Venom with an F. Venom: The Last Dance, which is a wild
I'm going to buy it for you.
No, please don't.
It's the first movie we talked about on here, man.
Is it?
Yeah, the first movie we reviewed.
Fuck. Bad. Okay,
We'll get you the Steelbook.
No, please don't. But Venom: The Last Dance, Smile 2, which I hated.
Getting you that too.
No, please don't. I would rather burn that movie with Challengers, actually. Actually, in terms of my list, not Heretic, I'm getting ahead of myself. Smile 2 and Challengers, they're right next to each other in like the rankings of my 2024. Heretic also is coming out on January 21st, as well as The Substance, which I'm really excited. I pre-ordered that. Here, which no one saw that movie, no one cares about that movie. Robert Zemeckis stopped making movies, unless it's going to be... Actually, no, you can stop. If it's going to be Polar Express 2, you can just kill yourself right now. Elevation is releasing on Blu-ray and 4K on January 21st. The Return, which I saw. Monster Summer, which has Mel Gibson. Woo! Bad trailer. Horrible movie, I'm sure. Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2 are getting a 4K release that I'm actually genuinely excited about, as well as Jackie Brown on 4K. Those are some stellar releases for some great Quentin Tarantino films. But, yeah. I don't know, Corey, out of these films, are there any that you're kind of itching to get? I know Heretic is one that I haven't pre-ordered or purchased yet that I'm like, when do I pull the trigger on this?
Yeah, Heretic's got the cool like A24,
the A24
exclusives are pretty
nice.
Sweet. They've started selling some of those in Walmart, which is cool. I like seeing them in like outside of the like online shop. Substance, definitely be picking that one up. And then I'm always tempted in like upgrading my Tarantinos, so the Kill Bills and Jackie Brown might get. And I'm a completionist, so someday Venom: The Last Dance will be in my collection, just to see all the beautiful the montage at the end with Memories by Maroon 5 playing.
That and what? I had some help in the fucking
in the end credits.
End credits. Like, what is this? Yeah, wow. It's always hard to explain to other people that I know. Like when a new release or a new version of a movie comes out that's better than the version I have. And I'm like, oh, I need to buy that one to basically sell the one I have. And they're like, well, you already own the movie. I'm like, yeah, but like that one's better. And I can't explain like that tendency or that addiction to anyone without them being like, there's something off upstairs. And I'm like, I get that. And I'm not saying that there isn't something
We're
off,
both the same way.
but you can fuck off and let me just be happy, right? Like, so I don't know. Aside from that, moving into some movie news, after kind of laughing a lot, we're going to talk about some sad news actually off the start. When this past week, David Lynch did pass away on January 16th. He was 78 years old, which you're getting into that age where it's like, hey, it's more of a celebration as opposed to consistently mourning, but it's wild because David Lynch has had such a big impact, especially on independent filmmaking. One of my favorite things, it is definitely a more recent thing, but one of my favorite things David Lynch has ever done is his appearance in The Fabelmans, where he played basically John Ford at the very end of that film. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen The Fabelmans. If you haven't, you're missing out, but I'm a big fan of David Lynch's work. Obviously, he did Blue Velvet, Mulholland Drive. My favorite, which is Elephant Man. I think that is the most beautifully, visually stunning black and white film ever made. He did The Lost Highway, which I've never seen, but I've always wanted to. Eraserhead, which is just a nightmare, nonstop, and I love it. And then, obviously, he has a lot of fans for the Twin Peaks show, and then the movie, and then the revival that he's put out. But Lynch, last year, he revealed that he had emphysema, and he kind of accredits that to his constant smoking. But some reports mention his kind of forceful relocation due to the current LA wildfires kind of added some stress to his already worsening condition. So sadly, David Lynch at 78 passed away January 16th. Corey, what is your how do you interact with David Lynch? What is your relationship with his work prior to hearing of his passing?
Yeah, it's interesting because I haven't seen a lot of his movies. Kind of most notably, I've seen Dune. He gave us the first Dune movie.
Yeah, and honestly, after seeing Denis Villeneuve's and reading the book and then going back and watching Lynch's, I'm like, this isn't bad. Like, people hate on it.
It's an interesting watch.
Yeah,
it's very interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can probably expect next week in our reviews that I will have watched. I haven't seen Elephant Man, so I need to check that one off the list. And a lot of his other stuff as well. So, but you, even though I haven't seen a lot of his stuff, still feel his impact just in kind of his surrealism. And you just see clips from his movies. You see scenes, and you feel his impact. And all the directors after he passed away, Spielberg and so many others coming out just saying, like, I wouldn't have made a lot of my movies without David Lynch's impact and seeing his films. So you understand that he is just a force in filmmaking industry. But yeah, so definitely sad that we don't get to have David Lynch in the world anymore.
He's one of those directors that like people refer to like Lynchian or like
Right.
Lynch films. Like his name brings with it an expectation of like his representation of a genre or just the way he makes films. Like it's almost like known fact when you mention like, oh, it's a Lynch film. It's like, oh, you go in with like this interpretation or expectation already. So I think he is easily one of the most influential directors of recent memory. It's sad to see that he's not around. I remember there's, I think, an interview with him where he was kind of more like, not bedridden, but he was living at home, and he was like, yeah, I'd be willing to make another film if they're able to come to me, basically, with how I could make the film. But it's like, damn, I could. It's a director that has such a decorated past in terms of the films that he's made. There are some that I haven't seen. The biggest one that I feel like I've missed out on is Mulholland Drive, and just everything I've heard about that movie is that it's just fucking wild, and I can't wait to see it. But it's just, I wish that he could still make movies in the way that Francis Ford Coppola is still making movies, in the way that Clint Eastwood is still making movies. 78 isn't necessarily young, but it feels like too young for David Lynch to pass. So when I saw that pop up on my feed this week, I was like, God fucking damn, like really? Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
It was, I believe it was the same day, Bob Uecker passed away, who... for me personally, as a 6-year-old child growing up and baseball being the first sport that I loved, Bob Uecker, who's known as Mr. Baseball, is somebody that I feel like every dad in America is just like, this is somebody you need to know as far as baseball history. He was a player for 6 years, and then he was a broadcaster for the Milwaukee Brewers for 54 years. But he wasn't just involved in baseball. He was also a comedian, made a lot of appearances on the Johnny Carson show, and he was in a lot of Miller Lite commercials, which are hilarious if you haven't watched them. Also, his Baseball Hall of Fame speech is hilarious. And for movie fans, kind of connecting to this, he was the announcer Harry Doyle in the Major League movies, who is just a standout. There are so many
funny in those movies too.
I mean, every announcer calling baseball games today saying just a bit outside,
just a bit
and
outside.
I feel like a lot of people don't know that was him. But also just parts in that movie too, where somebody's playing the Indians and they hit a home run, and he's like, outfielder's gonna need a rocket up his ass to catch that one. And he's just drunk in the booth, just calling these games. And there's another part too where Indians are playing. He's like, and they're going in the 8th inning. The Indians have one hit, one goddamn hit. Are you serious? Stat sheet right on this? It's just that type of comedic timing from Bob Uecker that is everybody in the world loved Bob Uecker. Whether you were a Brewers fan or not, whether you loved baseball or not, like, people knew Bob Uecker. They loved him. He's such a legend. This one hit me really hard. Just as a kid, like I said, just being indoctrinated with Bob Uecker's presence in baseball. But I know he's up in heaven, just making everybody laugh around a table, just telling jokes, and that makes me very happy.
Yeah, my relationship with Bob Uecker was almost the opposite, because I'm not the biggest baseball fan, and I never had that really in my life growing up. But I had a stepdad that was like, "Oh, you've never heard of Major League? We're watching Major League." And that is one of my favorite comedies. I love Major League so fucking much. And I didn't know at the time that Bob Uecker in that movie as the broadcaster is an actual broadcaster. So that my relationship to how Bob Uecker kind of is in life and how he influenced my life was kind of backwards, I feel like, to some, where it's like, oh, I discovered him in this movie, knowing him as a hilarious component of this film, and then being like, oh wait, this is partially what he does for a living, actually, for the Brewers. So I really love his work in those films. It's kind of it's surreal, especially with David Lynch and Bob Uecker. It's just like, wow, like some classic, like, just inexplainably talented people and great at what they do, irreplaceable people doing such a great job, and now that they're gone, it's just like, wow, like it is very devastating. But now I need to watch Major League.
Yeah, very different people, but very versatile in different ways
100%.
too. So yeah, definitely rest in peace, and much love to the families, friends, both families there. Jumping into some awards season updates. We love talking about award season stuff here. Some big nominations came out this week. We had the Producers Guild, which they have like the Outstanding Producer Award, essentially their best picture. The nominees were Anora, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune 2, Amelia Perez, A Real Pain, September 5th, The Substance, and Wicked. We also had the WGA nominations, the Writers Guild. For Original Screenplay, we had A Real Pain, Anora, Challengers, Civil War, and My Old Ass, which, great to see that movie on there. And then Adapted Screenplay, A Complete Unknown, Dune 2, Hitman, Nickel Boys, and Wicked. We also had the BAFTAs. Not going to read through every category there, just wanted to highlight best film for the BAFTAs. Anora, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, and Amelia Perez. For me, this is, kind of some of the people that I expected to be nominated here. Not too many surprises. I think PGA is a pretty good indicator of the majority of the Best Picture nominations for the Oscars. I think the couple that I think could substitute in are maybe Sing Sing and Nickel Boys. I think those could maybe swap with a couple movies like A Real Pain and September 5th maybe. There's kind of like 7 or 8 that are locked in, I think, for Best Picture.
Yeah.
And then there's a few...
The bubble of 3.
There's like 3 or 4 that are kind of on that outside looking in. But definitely interesting. I love tracking award stuff, so just wanted to shout out some of the nominations from this week.
Yeah, no, I'm excited, and it might be recency bias, but to see The Brutalist kind of having such a good kind of standing in terms of these nominations, I I think without a doubt will get nomination for Best Picture at the Oscars, as well as Honora. A Complete Unknown, I'm really kind of pleasantly surprised by the staying power of that, as well as James Mangold. We talked about getting the DGA nomination as well. September 5, I can't wait to fucking watch that movie when it actually reaches a theater near us, but I'm getting kind of tired of movies from 2024 still creeping up to 2025 because there's only limited release in 2024. I wish that was amended at least in some term of, no, you're a 2025 film because that's when the audiences actually saw you. But I'm sure you could assume that I'm pissed about Challengers getting a WGA nomination because I think if you think Challengers is a well-written movie, you have a thumb up your ass and a candy cane down your throat. I think you are dumb as fuck, but that's fine, whatever. Civil War, I'm very happy to see some love for Civil War because I feel like that was such a polarizing movie for no reason. People went into that movie thinking, oh, it's going to pick a side. And then they were mad that it was going to pick a side, but then it doesn't pick a side. And it's about journalism is supposed to be this objective thing that doesn't pick a side, and it's not supposed to be biased. And then people were mad at that. And I'm like, so did you want it to pick a side, or did you want it to be objective? Oh, you're mad regardless? Well, then get fucked and leave. Like, why are you mad about this movie that's so well written and so well photographed? I love Civil War. You and I both agree on how much we love that movie. My Old Ass, I'm so excited to see. Love for that in terms of original screenplay. Nickel Boys is, I know, a movie that you and I are both waiting to see, but it was a movie that I never really knew about until you and I started covering more movies in terms of this podcast and recording this. So I'm really excited to sit down and watch Nickel Boys. I'm sure you're so thrilled about Emilia Perez's standing in a lot of these races, but
yeah, we've had some rants the past couple of weeks.
We've had some rants.
I won't go back on that road.
I am pleasantly surprised that Denis Villeneuve, in terms of the BAFTA, is still in that Best Director conversation, as well as PGA. It's still in that conversation. It's a movie that, like I said, it's the best movie that's been made since I've been alive, at least in my opinion. So I'm happy that a movie that came out in March of 2024 is still relevant now in January in terms of, all right, we have nominations coming out for that past year. So I'm hoping that has some more staying power. Corey, what do you have any ones that you would take out of this? I know I'm happy to see Wicked. Are there any ones that are kind of surprising to you?
I mean, personally, fucking Emilia Perez, get that shit out of there. I think that's one of the best pictures of the year. Get fucked. Strong takes from us the past couple of weeks. Emilia Perez, Challengers. I feel like Honora we're both lower on than most critics.
But I'm not mad about that getting a Best Picture nom.
I am. Fuck that movie.
Really? Damn. Okay. Yeah. I think I might have liked it more than you. Brutalist.
Yeah, you for sure did.
I'm excited for you to see Brutalist and to see where that kind of ranked for you because like I said, I wasn't bored at all during that entire runtime. I really enjoyed that movie. And I think it's deserving of all of the nominations, if not more nominations, in terms of Guy Pearce and Felicity Jones at the SAG. So, yeah, September 5, I'll catch up on you, Nickel Boys. You're my other homework assignment. Moving into a lot of trailers, I feel like, came out this past week. We got a first look and some footage, as well as an actual first official trailer for the new Until Dawn film, which will be directed by is directed by David F. Sandberg. It's the horror film adaptation of that popular video game that came out in the mid-2010s, I think. Film will release April 25, 2025. I'm excited for it. It does differ from the game a little bit, and in that kind of first look footage, they did kind of touch on how they're incorporating different story elements. In the video game, it is basically a choose-your-own-adventure, and the choices you make in the game kind of dictates how some characters die. And it's kind of hard to do a choose-your-own-adventure in terms of a movie when you're trying to put out an experience that everyone can share and have the same kind of visual time with, a visual experience with. Corey, what was your reaction, I guess, to the Until Dawn?
So I've never played the games before, but I thought the trailer looked cool. I'm down for it. David F. Sandberg. If you haven't seen Lights Out, that movie is a great little horror film that is very simple, very to the point.
Very forgotten about.
Very forgotten.
No one
about.
talks about it.
2016 it came out, and I love that movie. I think it's really one of my favorite horror movies that genuinely gave me some good scares. We've talked about that, just kind of genuinely being scary. Mm-hmm. But I like that movie a lot. So, yeah, looking forward to this one for sure.
Yeah, I have played the game. I played the game through and through. Really enjoyed the game, and that kind of up to the player's choices, how that results and how it leads into things in the end. It is a really fun component of the game, and to see David F. Sandberg in that first look, he mentioned, it's kind of hard to do that. And so what their approach to it of the clock resets,
and you kind of get this new horror genre that you have to deal with and incorporate. And I'm like, all right, well, that's a good inventive way to do this in an Until Dawn world. But to me, I'm like, you don't necessarily, if they didn't name this movie Until Dawn and they're like, this is the premise, the clock resets and you have to deal with this new genre, I'm like, that's almost like Cabin in the Woods-esque. Like, okay, like I think you guys could do this without it really being tied to Until Dawn. But with that being said, I did really like the footage. I'm excited by the trailer. I think it looks good. David F. Sandberg, like you said, I have confidence in. I love his Shazam movies, which, especially Fear of the Gods, I feel like people would disagree on, but I think that movie is perfectly fine. Lights Out is such an inventive and fun and at times genuinely scary horror film from, I think, 2016 that I really appreciated. So I'm excited to see more horror films from him. So Until Dawn, eagerly awaiting you in April of 2025. Another trailer came out for the film The Alto Nights, which is the first trailer for a mob film featuring Robert De Niro in dual roles as real competing mob bosses, which looks interesting to me. But it's written by the Goodfellas writer Nicholas Pileggi. So you have kind of that expectation behind it of, oh, well, this should be well written. The trailer does look pretty convincing to me. I'm excited for it. But the one thing it has to convince me of is that, oh, Robert De Niro plays two roles and they're not related to each other. They look a lot alike, but they're not related to each other. They sound almost exactly alike, but they're not related to each other. So, Corey, what did you think of the Alto Nights trailer?
Yeah, I'm excited to see a new Barry Levinson movie. I feel like it's been a long time since I've said those words.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love mob movies. That's my favorite kind of like subgenre of movies. So I'm always down for that. And De Niro, we don't know how many more times he's going to be able to be in a mob movie. So really appreciate that. Really excited to check this one out and see if. I'm always a little iffy when like it's a dual role thing. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I hope it works because I'm excited for that one. Another trailer that we got, which is one that did a lot to quash some of my concerns about this series, was Daredevil Born Again. You and I both love the Daredevil show on Netflix. Yeah. What an interesting time to look back on the Netflix Marvel shows that if in 10 years nobody's going to know what you mean by that.
Yeah.
But we're getting this trailer, and it's been after years of they had a script that was going to be completely different and not bring back a lot of people from the original 3 seasons, and then they saw it and said maybe we should do what worked before and bring back Foggy and Karen and a lot of these other elements about it. The brutal action, which we see some of in this trailer, which is great. You see bones breaking, you see knees going inward, which that's Mason's weakness there.
She's bad.
But I just love that this trailer is like Kingpin and Daredevil sitting down in a diner just talking, because that's honestly the most interesting stuff of the first 3 seasons is the conversations, the ideologies of these characters, and I really hope that this feels nothing like the MCU. Yeah. I don't want this to fit in. I don't need this to be like, oh, this is from She-Hulk, Daredevil coming in. No. This is from Echo and Hawkeye, Kingpin coming in. Like, I don't need that. It was great to see them in those projects, but this trailer did so much to give me confidence that Kevin Feige is like, all right, just do your thing here. Sort of like how he did with like Ryan Reynolds and Deadpool and Wolverine. Just like, do your thing. You have like a lot of control over this. I'm really, really excited for this series. And it's also the one that I am also the most nervous about because it could not be great. But this trailer I thought was great.
Yeah, I can't wait. This is, I think, the only bridge we'll really have to get that feel of the classic Netflix shows, Punisher, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, that siphoned into the mainstream, bigger, greater Marvel storyline, and I can't wait. And I was originally like, when they announced it and that Charlie Cox was coming back, and they initially were going to be like, well, no, it's a different story, but we still have Charlie Cox as Daredevil. And it's like, well, how are you going to, I know you have multiverse going on, but how are you going to answer that? Like, why change it from what it already was when what we already had was so well done? And when Kevin Feige kind of was able to get more control of the release strategy in terms of these Disney Plus projects and back and have his authorship in terms of what was coming out of Marvel in terms of what was being produced. And now we get this correction of like, you know what? No, Foggy's back. Fucking Karen Page is back. We got John Bernthal as Punisher back. And that diner scene that you referenced between him and Wilson Fisk, where Wilson Fisk's like, I must admit, it is good to see, or whatever that fucking exchange.
Vanessa.
Like, Vincent D'Onofrio as Wilson Fisk is perfect
Incredible.
casting, and I'm so excited to see that dynamic kind of unfold throughout this 4th season of this show, even though it's the first recognized by Marvel. Yeah, it was so fucking beautifully violent. I hate to see Bones snap, but damn, does it look good in Daredevil. So I can't wait. Charlie Cox is amazing as Matt Murdock. I'm excited that we're getting Punisher now in the MCU, that we're finally acknowledging this character, and it's like, all right, I'm excited to see how this character works alongside other people, because if you were to bring the Punisher into a world where Black Widow exists, even though I get Black Widow's dead in the MCU, but Black Widow uses guns, Punisher uses guns, but Punisher uses guns in a lot more of a disgusting and grotesque way. So I'm excited to see how Marvel overall after Daredevil kind of balances these differing tones and incorporates it more into the mainline MCU. But I am so stoked for the show. I can't wait. I think this trailer was fantastic. They don't need to release any more trailers. I don't think they need to. I don't need to see more. You've shown me enough. I'm sold. Let me watch it. I can't wait. I forget how many episodes they're doing for this Disney Plus series, but I know that they're doing more than like the typical like 6-episode season. So that excites me. Premieres in March. Can't fucking wait.
Bring back the theme as well. Just do the exact same theme.
Is there not hints of it in the trailer?
There is,
Yeah.
for sure.
I'm hoping they do.
Like not only just the music, but like the
Title card?
title, and just the way of like the melting of like wax
I
almost.
never skipped that. I
Hell
would
no.
never skip that. Fucking when it gives you that little skip intro, never. I would watch that through and through.
Don't
because
make-
the score is so good.
Don't make any changes. Just insert that into
Just
the
act
opening.
like nothing happened.
Yep.
It's
just
the
bring it back.
continuation.
So great. Into another piece of Disney shows on Disney Plus. We got Ahsoka Season 2, some news coming out there. First big one is that Rory McCann, who is best known for his work in Game of Thrones, playing the Hound, one of my favorite characters from that show. He's great, he's brutal, he's vicious in that show. And he's a friend of the late Ray Stevenson. He's going to be taking over the role of Balin Skoll, who I think is one of the standout characters from Ahsoka, a character nobody knew before this, and really stood out in that show. I think it's great casting. I think it fits that same type of big presence. Really excited for that. And then there's been rumors circulating that Ewan McGregor coming back as Obi-Wan Kenobi. I imagine this is sort of kind of Hayden Christensen's role as like a flashback, or you see, little flashes of him throughout there. Maybe like even more extended flashbacks to the Clone Wars. I think that would be really fun in season 2. But I love the first season of Ahsoka. I just bought it on 4K, like the physical release steelbook that they did, which is absolutely beautiful. Love that Disney's doing that. So yeah, stoked for Ahsoka season 2. And I like this casting news, and I'm excited for where season 2 could go.
Yeah, that's a show that I feel like you and I are maybe in the minority on, because I feel like the brunt of the reaction to Ahsoka was just how kind of played out it was. I really enjoyed Ahsoka. As someone who did not watch any of Rebels, I am excited to see more of that Balin Skoll performance. Especially, I don't know much about Rory McCann's back story. I've addressed that I've never watched Game of Thrones, but I've seen in reports that he was actually friends with Ray Stevenson, so that kind of actually that works for me, and I'm happy that they're willing to kind of revive this character and keep it moving in terms of paying respects to Ray Stevenson. But you know what? The character doesn't die when the actor. Like, this is still a story to be told. Like, I have an immense amount of respect for that, especially when you look at kind of what happened with Princess Leia and how they handled Princess Leia in Rise of Skywalker. That is a role where I'm like, you know what? It's not 100% dependent on the actor. I think you could have passed that off onto someone. Or if you look into other Disney properties, if you look at T'Challa, I know that there's rumors of T'Challa being recast. I think T'Challa could have been recast and been in Wakanda forever, as opposed to pushing that mantle onto Shuri. But I'm excited to see someone kind of take control of the role. Like I said, Balin is, I think, the highlight of Ahsoka, and I really like Ahsoka on a whole, but Balin was the part of that show that really sold me, and I'm excited to see that character kind of live on, and for us to get a season 2 for a show that, you know what, if they announced a Book of Boba Fett season 2, I'd be like, lick my ass, I don't need this. If they announced Obi-Wan Kenobi, I'd be like, stop, you're making this amazing character worse and worse, and you're diluting Star Wars with this. If they made an Acolyte season 2, I would have nothing to say because I haven't watched any of that, but I'm excited to see Ahsoka season 2. I'm excited to see some of these characters continue. And if Ewan McGregor is kind of gonna, he's rumored to come back. I'm excited to potentially see more of his interaction with Ahsoka, since we're lucky enough to see more of that Clone Wars, Hayden Christensen, Anakin. I was like, wow, that was my bread and butter. So I can't wait. I'm excited for Ahsoka season 2. I'm kind of excited by these developments, whether or not that Ewan McGregor stuff does come to fruition. But regardless, from Corey and I, we would like to thank you for sitting down and having some good old liquor drinks with us for our 12th episode of Slate Night, the Film Fan Podcast. Be sure to follow us on Instagram for more in-depth movie reviews. I will say not of Challengers, because fuck that movie. We do also share a lot of movie news. Subscribe to our podcast if you can. Leave us a review. In the world of film, it's not just about what happens on screen, but also about who's sitting next to you in the theater.
Also, want to shout out, going to be putting some stuff on TikTok now that it's back. We mentioned earlier, but going to start putting some short reviews on there, so definitely check out Slate Night Podcast on TikTok, Instagram, and on YouTube as well. I think we mentioned it last week, but we're putting our full podcast on YouTube and maybe doing some filmed reviews of stuff in the coming weeks, so we're excited about that and growing this a little bit. So for Mason and I at Slate Night, that's a wrap.